Well, hi and welcome. It is Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. This is the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard on the East Coast. I am Whitney Wiley on the West Coast.
What? Uh-oh.
It is the best coast, West Coast. Woo woo.
Now we got beef.
We are here with you to talk about all things leadership, and we are looking at leadership in the news this week. And so this conversation, hopefully, I could say has a trigger warning, but that's not the point. It's not the goal. We will not be digging deep into the politics of the issue or legalities of the issue that sparked this conversation, but it's not actually the topic of this conversation. So in the lead up to and wake of the Roe v. Wade decision from the United States Supreme Court, a number of companies have stepped up and stepped out to align themselves with women and their right to control their bodies and their lives. And years ago, you'll recall, I think it's, if I have it correct, maybe 3 years ago, Nike and some other companies took a stand against social injustice with campaigns and alignment with other organizations that advocate for improved race and community relations. There were boycotts and other efforts against Nike and some other companies for taking those stands. But I want to direct you back a ways. So Howard Bowen is widely regarded as the father of modern corporate social responsibility. And in 1953, in his book, Social Responsibilities of the Businessman, he wrote, corporate social responsibility refers to the obligations of businessmen and women to pursue those policies which are desirable in terms of the objectives and values of our society. And I remember, along with hearing a familiar refrain of shut up and dribble or shut up and run, a similar notion for companies that they should just manufacture and sell their products, their goods and products, and stay out of social issues and politics. And so there is that segment, but it appears that while some still say that, employees and the public actually want something different. And there are studies that show that the vast majority of the public and employees and major corporations want their companies, the companies they do business with, the companies they work for, the companies they buy goods and products and services from, to actually be involved and to stand up for social issues. So our conversation today is not about taking sides. It's not one side or the other, or to tell you or any company what stance to take on a particular issue, or to say whether companies are right or wrong for offering. And again, in the case that prompted this conversation that Robert and I want to have, that they're right or wrong for offering to support or pay for their employees' healthcare needs, whatever those needs are and wherever they need to happen. But to focus you, as we do every week, on the role of leadership in terms of getting involved, and to help you as a leader make sure that what you do is right for your business. And so we're going to get into what that means, how that manifests, and how you can be purposeful and intentional, which ultimately is where we want to take you. Whether you get involved or don't get involved, both of those are choices, right? You should not do it out of fear. You should do it because it fits with the purpose, the values, the mission, the goals of your business, and then the way you go about doing it should be very intentional. So, Robert, any opening thoughts here?
Wow. Yeah, you're very thorough. I think the thing to add to that, or to piggyback off of that, because I think what I'm going to say was implied by what you said, is that any organization that is looking to get involved, they need to do so because they truly believe that they want to be involved. We see this with a lot of initiatives and organizations where when diversity, equity, and inclusion became, very popular, there were some organizations that got into that and they put, these D, E, and I officers in place. And then we started hearing that from the people in these organizations, that the organization wasn't really fully committed to it, that it was, for lack of a better word, window dressing or flavor of the month. So if you're going to get involved in something, whatever social issue, you're looking to get into as an organization, really think about why you're doing it. And if you're going to do it, commit to it fully, because the people in your organization will feel whether or not you are fully committed to it. That's one thing. On the other hand, if you don't get involved, if you stay away from the issues, whatever those issues are, know that it may not be in line with what some or maybe even the majority of your employees are thinking and feeling. So you need to be ready to engage in those conversations. And if you don't think that you should engage in those conversations, be ready for potential backlash from your employees. Because there are some organizations that feel, hey, we employ you, we give you a job, and for that we expect loyalty. And in some cases, I'll just say fealty, no matter what we do. So I think that's two sides of that to look into.
Absolutely. And I think your point is well taken. It doesn't matter whether you get involved or don't get involved, right? The bottom line is both are a decision. I think a lot of times there's a thought that if we look at something, an issue, and we just sort of pretend it's not there, that somehow we haven't made a decision, haven't made a choice, right? So if we don't get involved, that means something. And it does mean something. And so the bottom line is it the something? Is it is it the message that you're intending? And we talk about this just about every week, right? In terms of how you are leading, the actions you take or the actions you choose not to take, whether it's about, directly leading your employees or leading in the broader context of social issues. What you do matters. What you don't do matters. They both send a message. And the question is that the message that you want to send? Right? Is that the message that you want to send? And there are risks on both sides. So what you want to do is to make sure it's a well-informed and I don't want to say calculated risk, but it is a risk that you are taking, having weighed the pros and cons as it relates, or the pluses and minuses, the advantages, the disadvantages of your ultimate decision to act or not to act. And does it move you where it is you are trying to take your business? And, Robert mentioned your employees and how this impacts your employees, and it goes beyond that, right? It's your shareholders, it is your customers, your vendors, all of the people, the entities, the other organizations that are connected to you. You're all in this together. And so taking into account, and we're going to talk about, I've got 5 steps that I want to lay out that I think will help you in terms of moving a corporate social responsibility a program forward in the way that Robert said, which is to be basically authentic, right? To be true to your values, to be connected with your employees so that they are involved, they are engaged, because you're a team, right? And how that impacts the others in your stakeholder circle.
Yeah, and I think that the danger for some organizations, there are some organizations out there that see very little, what's the word I want to use, turnover or attrition. And so they think that they may use that as the only touchstone for whether or not employees are happy or unhappy, right? But there could be other things. I mean, look at, the attitudes of your employees. Look at some of the things your employees complain about. Look at, the quality of the work. Has it changed? I mean, there's a lot of other ways to look to see whether or not employees are happy. It's not just whether or not they're leaving. But a lot of organizations, I worked for an organization. It was like, we have no turnover, very little turnover, but the employees that worked there were miserable because they felt stuck. And so the quality of the work suffered because of that. And so you need to look at other, what are the metrics that you're using to determine? And I'm saying that because as an organization, you may decide that you do not want to get involved in a social issue, right? And you may say, okay, well, no one's complained. No one's left, because and if you're using that as your only guide or your guidepost for that, you may be missing the point. There may be indeed people that are unhappy, people that find that issue, very important. And the work or quality of the work they put out may suffer because of that. So,
it's interesting you say that, because as you've said, that is the same argument that could be made for anything, whether it involves social issues or not.
mm-hmm.
Right? If their employees aren't saying anything, I would say if your employees aren't saying anything, you need to be asking more questions.
Well, it's like the married couple, right? When the husband is like, "Oh, you want a divorce? You never complained." Right? It's like, so there was no complaint, so he just assumed everything was fine.
All right. Yeah. I do not. What is it? Do not confuse silence for acquiescence, right? For happiness. Do not confuse that for happiness. And what you want ultimately is for your employees to be engaged, right? That's one of the things we're looking for, so that when something like this comes up and there's an opportunity to have conversations so that you can make decisions about where you go next, right? That you are actually involving, which is the number one step that I'm going to bring up, is that you would involve your employees. But before we get there, just a definition. I mentioned corporate social responsibility. Just want to provide a little context of what it is. It traditionally has been broken down into 4 categories: environmental, philanthropic, ethical, and economic responsibility. There are a number of ways in which it shows up. I teach a university course to MBA students, and business law, corporate ethics, and corporate social responsibility. And so the way we talk about corporate social responsibility in that context really has to do with the ethics around arising from different activities that organizations take. But it is not just about ethics. It's not just about the law. It's about really doing business in a way that is in alignment with and addresses the expectations of your shareholders and your stakeholders, right? That you are looking at a wide variety of things, not just environmental management, but how you're sourcing things, sustainability issues, how you're engaging your stakeholders, your labor practices and working conditions, employee and community relations, social equity, gender balance, wide range of issues. And so initially it sort of started as this concept about sustainability and environmental, and it has grown. And the reason that you do this, the reason that you pay attention to your employees and the way we talk about just about every single week, is because it has an impact on your bottom line, and it can be a positive impact if you are doing it in a purposeful and intentional way, rather than sort of going with the way the wind blows, as Robert mentioned earlier, just doing it because other companies are doing it. And the statistics say around 80% of companies globally have some sort of corporate social responsibility program. And the question is, what gets incorporated in that, right? And so in the end, each company gets to define for itself really what that is, what the corporate goals are, what you're going to address, and why you're going to address it. And while there may be risk and taking a stand or getting involved, there actually are some competitive advantages that go along with that, including access to capital and markets. There are now companies that do scorecards on all manner of things, the makeup, the diversity and makeup of your boards, of your management, of your sales forces and things like that. It has an opportunity to help you with improved productivity and efficient human resources, because, as we've mentioned, it's an opportunity for you to engage your employees. And it can improve your brand image and reputation with that segment of the consumer base that is in alignment with your values and your goals. So that's why it's important to get involved, and if you're going to do so, to do it with intentionality. So the first thing, the first step, assuming, that you are clear and have made a decision to do something in alignment with your organization vision, values, your mission and whatnot, is to engage your internal stakeholders, right? And Robert mentioned this, that you would be involving the C-suite, human resources, your public affairs people, your employees at every level of the organization, certainly general counsel, and others. So engage your stakeholders. Robert.
I agree. I love how you said general counsel. Gotta get your
I have an affinity for counsel.
No, I totally agree with that. There's really not a whole lot more to say on that. I really believe that, and we talk about this when you look at this, it has a lot in common with strategy, and we can go for or against strategy. We know that there are a lot of people that are moving away from the whole strategic initiatives because they don't work, because people don't follow through and the whole thing. But it has a lot to do with how we talk about utilizing a strategy. You got to get everybody involved. When everybody is involved, everybody has, for lack of a better phrase, skin in the game. And when people feel that they've contributed to the project, the strategy, the initiative, they are more apt to work toward making it a success. And I think that that's what's really key. a lot of organizations are so, how should I say this? They're so attached to the top down approach to everything that they don't stop to look and say, hey, can we do something differently? They just want to be productive and say that the leadership team has done something, and really give everybody underneath them an or else, right? You do this or else.
Yeah.
But I think that when you get people involved, it really changes the game for most people in the organization.
Absolutely. The other piece of that is that when they are not involved in, I'm sort of just saying this the opposite of the way you said it. When they're not involved, they are not backing you up, right? And you will not find them sort of standing up for you. And an example would be Disney, right? And recently down in Florida, and the Don't Say Gay bill, that was actually employee driven, right? There was a non-action. And again, not saying right or wrong what Disney should or should not have done in terms of the position that it took, but the way it went about it, I would say, is something that needed to be reconsidered, right?
Mhm.
Their approach to not involving employees, and employees ultimately sort of pressing the issue on that. And had they, when they made the decision to not get involved, talk to the employees. I don't work for Disney. I did at one point in time,
I did not know that.
a long time ago, in a whole other lifetime. I worked for Disney, but I do not work for Disney, and I don't consult for Disney out of Florida. So I don't know all the details, but the way I understand it is that employees press the issue on this. And so it seems to me, at least from an outsider, and if you know differently, or you are an employee of Disney and you know differently, feel free to correct me, that if they had engaged employees, right, on the front end, that may have gone in a different direction. So
Yeah, I agree. I don't know how they did this. You know more about it than I do, but I agree. And we've said this. You get your people involved. I used to use this example to clients that were, new managers, and I use the example of getting your kid to clean their room. And I use myself as an example. When I was a kid, my mom would come in, I want you to clean your room this way. And it was, to me, it was completely, it didn't make sense to me. It was her logic. And then it was like, do this, do this. And, what would happen was I would do some of the stuff and then put the other stuff under the bed or in the closet. And finally, she, was on to me and said, look, how do you want to do it? And that changed the game. I was like, oh, I want to do this, and this. She's like, fine, just get it clean. And I was able to do that. And as a kid, I was able to sustain that. The same thing, with employees. Now, employees are not children. I always want to make that distinction. But human psychology is still human psychology. People will put more effort into what they help create. It's just, it's been out there for hundreds of years. But managers, leaders sometimes resist getting those folks involved for many different reasons. Some could be because of ego. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago.
yeah.
It could be because of the culture of the organization. That's how we've always done it. It could be because of fear. It could be because of many things. But as a leader, you need to look at how you're typically doing things and look at the results, not just the surface results. And I mentioned that earlier, not just, oh, no, people aren't leaving, no one's complaining, but you really need to dig deeper into what people are really thinking and feeling. And when you do that, it should help guide your actions and your approach.
I did just want to say this. A lot of what we're talking about and the steps that I'm going to be mentioning are part of any change management that you'll be involved in any initiative. So the good news is that you have likely heard of these before, you've done them before, so you'll be able to connect with what I'm saying and pull from some experiences. So the next step after engaging your internal stakeholders, again, not just employees, but your shareholders and others in the C-suite, your business partners, and legal counsel, make sure you're doing things well, is to create a communications plan. So this would necessarily involve getting your communications team to be a part of this. And this is one of those steps in any change management process that often gets left out, sort of along with involving, at every level, your employees and others, is creating a plan that you can communicate and use to communicate, right? You need a marketing campaign. If you're going to get involved in these issues, it should not just be the CEO, jumping out full throttle without having thought through, or any other member of the management team or someone else pretending to speak on behalf of the organization, just getting out and saying, this is what we're doing, or this is what we believe, without having put together a formal written plan. And it should be something, quite frankly, that you should have in your toolbox, so that as things come up, you can make modifications to address what is happening at the moment. All right. Along with that should be the goals, measurable objectives, and key performance indicators, so that you understand, right, that if you deviate from your purpose and you are not doing this with intentionality, how it can have an impact on your investment of time, energy, your reputation, and the like.
I love the communication team, saying the communication team. Some organizations may not have that, but that would be a tremendous opportunity to create one and utilize people from different levels in your organization, give them a role in the initiative.
So, and you've got a good point. If you don't have an internal communications team, or you've not hired a consulting, have a consulting relationship with a professional communications team, I think what Robert said is a viable option, right? Along with getting some input from someone, but pulling together people from various parts of your organization to make a determination how you're going to communicate moving forward. The bottom line is that you have a plan, that it not just be off the cuff, ad hoc, and without some intentionality. The next is to build partnership with your employees, with your vendors, your investors, and clients in the community where it is appropriate, right? That your community partnerships. And the reason that you do this is because you are not on an island, right? This is, if you're trying to make social change, the goal would be to include the community that is impacted by what it is you're doing.
I love that. That's all I got to say about that. I love that. That's great.
I accept. And along with that, sort of piggybacking on that one, is to activate third-party endorsements. So people that you're partnering with, do they have strong social media following? Are they adept at using the press, right? And this can go back to your communications plan. How can you best communicate things? How can you leverage your resources, your partnerships, the goodwill of others in your orbit to help you communicate and to endorse the position that you've taken?
Yeah, that's a really great idea. Looking at that social, I I don't want to date myself, but I take social media for granted. Social media has a lot of power. And when you're partnering with people, it should be somebody who knows how to leverage that power. And I think that is a really great idea. You got two from me. So two in a row.
And then the last one, step 5, is to measure, tweak, and repeat. And I think you'll have something to say on this. This is, measuring the results, right? Looking at seeing whether or not you got the outcome that you're looking for. And if not, evaluating it, making some adjustments where necessary, and then repeating. You should be asking questions. Are you seeing success? Are you getting the results that you need? Do you need to tweak your strategy, or do you need to tweak the tactics? Doing good is a good thing to do if you are getting out of it what you want. If it's not getting you what you want, then you want to make some adjustments, because it's the same thing as having interactions with your employees, right? If you're not getting the results that you want with your employees, with the public, with your consumers, you'll want to make some adjustments. And the only way you'll be able to do that is to measure, evaluate, and then make some decisions on how to make adjustments.
Yeah, and I do have something to say about this, because when you were talking, I started thinking about, if I were to categorize this, the whole getting involved in social issues and measuring it, I would look at it like, you have the emotional side of it, which is, usually the thing that spurs people to get involved has something to do with emotion. And then you have the intellectual, logical side, which takes a lot of discipline. And, if you're going to do something like that, if you're going to get involved in something like that, you have to have the discipline to measure it realistically and regularly. And I think that sometimes that is the piece that's missing from many initiatives, be it strategic, be it, social, whatever it is. It's like you put it out there, and then, because it was the quote unquote right thing to do.
Yeah.
Or you didn't put it out there because it was the quote unquote. But if you're putting it out there, measure it, have the discipline to measure it, know what you're looking for, ask quality questions, questions that will really give you data that's going to be meaningful. When we talk about, and we've talked about employee development, it's very similar to training. Training is just is part of the process. It's one part of the development process, and you need to measure it to see how it is working in tandem with the other parts of the process. So when you're looking at, okay, we put together this social initiative, we think it's going in the right direction. How are we going to measure whether it's going into the right direction? What are we looking for? You need to be able to ask those questions so you can, what you're looking for, what kind of answers you can possibly get, and then you can plan your reactions based on the answers that you get. I think that's really important, and a lot of people drop the ball on this. I've seen, you name the initiative, whether it's strategic planning, whether it's employee development. It's like, we did it, it's over. And that's not how it should work.
Right.
Initiating it, deploying it is only one aspect of the total continuum of whatever project you are engaged in.
I think if we keep a a mindset of it, what you just said is not a one and done, right? If your thought is that we're going to come out with one statement and that's going to be the end of it, right? It's you might as well not.
Well, we saw that when with the whole Black Lives Matter thing, right? It was some organization, we're just gonna make a statement. And to some employees, that was enough. For a lot, it wasn't enough. So you need to look at it, goes beyond, we're going to take a stand. Why are you taking a stand? Are you taking a stand because, like you said, everyone else is doing it? Or are you taking a stand because it's what you really believe in? Then if it's really what you believe in, have the discipline to go all the way with it, right?
I think that should be the final word. I like it. I like it, right? If you're going to do it, be all in. Just be all in. Or if you're not going to do it, be all in, right? If that's the decision, right? I think it's the waffling and it coming across as disingenuous that creates the problems. And yes, there are risks. You may lose some employees, you may lose some customers, but if you are staying true to who you are, to your identity, right, and you are moving with purpose and the actions you are taking are intentional, then for you, you're on the right path. Stay the course and it will work out the way it's supposed to. But be willing to make tweaks and adjustments as you need to along the way. So unless you have anything else you want to add.
No, I want to end on a high note.
Then let's end on a high note. We want to thank you for joining us for this episode of The State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. We are here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. And if there's a topic that you would like for us to discuss, if there's something that you've read in the news relating to leadership or something that you're experiencing or having a challenge with, reach out to us. Let us know. You can send a message to either or both of us. We will be happy to include that in a future episode. Or if there's something we can do to help you, whether it's coaching or consulting, Robert is an exceptional executive coach, and I am here for you as it relates to career management and transitions. Reach out, let us know how we can be of service to you, and we look forward to having you participate with us in the future. So until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.